Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's time for 10.5. For anyone that expected the meta review, just check the old video. It's still pretty relevant, nothing much has changed. Everything is kind of chilling and toning, like it's all getting relaxed in the meta, so not having any crazy changes. We're going to jump into 10.5, we're going to give you guys my first impressions, my thoughts, and so forth, and how it applies to solo queue and competitive, and in general the landscape of League of Legends. So let's get to it. I'm not gonna read this. I see that Sona icon, and I know it's going to be a lot of sarcastic jokes. So let's get to it. Alistar, base health increased. Passive stack gain no longer has a cooldown after Alistar roars. Moo! Cow needs more milk. 625 HP buff once Triumph stacks are consumed. Alistar can gain new stacks immediately. Oh, that's kind of neat. It's neat for Alistar players because in a lot of cases waves get one-shotted and it was kind of confusing that you didn't get stacks because it was kind of clear. Unclear, I mean, that you couldn't get stacks while the passive was on this cooldown. Which is cool, but not enough to bring Alistar back into the meta in any significant way. It is convenient, it's nice, but not good enough. So this changes whatever in terms of impact. We give it a 1 out of 5 in terms of impact. Cool. I mean, I get 2 out of 5, I guess. Cool for Alistar players, but Alistar still suffers from the same issues, and the cooldown on WQ is just too long. And if it's tuned maybe 1 second, 2 seconds, then it's back to broken again, I think. Amumu, of course, the scrubs in silver are going to make them a nerf. Amumu is getting nerf. So this kind of cooldown nerf is kind of harsh for something like Amumu because honestly you never buy CDR. Either you buy a tank and you go for tanky items, or you just go for AP, right? And even in the AP build, you don't get that much CDR. So this is rough. This is rough. This is, we were kind of hoping to see him in pro play because he's such a fun champion to see in pro play, but he's too problematic in low ranks for us to ever see him again in pro play. So unlucky. Bard, passive chime, chum, decreased. Okay. Passive Traveler's Call, additional damage per 5 chimes. 3. Went down by 3. Interesting. Oh, I wanted to rate the nerf. So this, we are 0.5. 0 out of 5 nerf, because they are nerfing it for the scrub nubs in the darkness. Bard. After a history of journeying around on the radar, Bard's blah, 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 we don't care. 3 damage nerf. So this doesn't change Bard's impact in the early game, and that's where he is the most OP. This is a solo queue nerf, of course, because in solo queue Bard has been very dominant. This is them trying to tone Bard win ratio down by a percentage or 2. Obviously, this is going to hit his scaling because eventually you're going to have more of these meeps to fire, and then it adds up because you get 3 damage less per chime. So, there is some calculation to be done there, and you'll figure out that you will actually lose a significant amount of damage. But usually you don't pick Bard for some sick damage. You just, because he's so goddamn mobile, he can travel across the map, he can gank mid very easily, and then he has a very strong kit to keep himself healthy and topped off on mana. And he also gets a lot of experience from the chimes and so forth. So I think Bard will still be very powerful in the game. Blitzcrank is getting nerfed. How do I rate this buff or nerf? Honestly, I don't think it changes things too much. It will maybe drop his win ratio a little bit. There are some scenarios where Bard was absurdly fed and he could like chunk you to half, and that will be less prevalent. With that being said, I don't think this nerf is whatever. I think it's whatever. Blitzcrank. Well, I need to rate the Bard nerf. Let's just give it a 1 out of 5. I think Bard needs, based off a solo queue, I think he needs to get chunked, but maybe it's just bias. Blitzcrank. So this is a buff for Bard, because you will pick Blitzcrank into Bard. Blitzcrank is also a solo queue menace. A lot of Blitzcrank is being played. I think Senna, Bard, and Blitzcrank are the supports that have the highest win ratio in solo queue right now, in higher ranks. And of course, Sona is just AD carry Sona with a Tahm Kench AD or whatever. Because Tahm Kench AD carry also has a very, very high win ratio. 3 armor, which is okay, but it's whatever. We don't care about this for pro play. It's all about, like, Blitzcrank is very matchup dependent. And this is not going to make winning matchup losing or whatever. This is just for those all-ins where surviving with 30 HP was Blitzcrank's goal, you know? So this is whatever. Graves. Base MR and MR growth increased, Q cost now flat, cooldown decreased. So the issue with Graves for me is the fact that the camps that have less armor are camps that are very easy to kill for the mages that, or like the junglers that actually take his place. And the reason I said mages because I feel like Graves suits in a world where, sure, when the enemy is AD heavy, Graves as a jungler is very good because he has a lot of base armor, so that's neat. But in the case of increasing his MR and making him better into APs, I feel like the AP junglers do what Graves want to do, but better. So I mentioned that Raptors have less armor, higher MR. But Karthus and Nidalee still have a very easy time of killing Raptors because they are just a camp that just die to AoE, right? They just get killed by AoE, so they don't care about this penalty. And then Graves, when he's going to take golems, the golems have more armor, so this penalty is going to be much more relevant, right? It takes a lot of time for Graves to kill a big golem in comparison to, for example, a Karthus. So this is, for me, the underlying Graves issue. Lane Graves, I can admit that this is something that I have very little information on, but I think just because I do have little information on speaks volumes about how little is being played, and these buffs are definitely helpful. Maybe we'll see more mid Graves and the mana decrease here and the cooldown decrease. Considering Q is a spell that you max fast, and this is a welcome buff, right? Graves is a champion that always toes the line between being really, really broken or really, really useless, but I think just losing Aegis and not being able to purchase any interesting HP items is what is the most tricky part for Graves. Because you want to buy HP to synergize with that armor, and the strength of Aegis was just perfect for Graves, and that meta is long gone. So we continue. Kaisa, I'm lagging. Kaisa, Cathian Rain, ability power down, okay. 12 missiles, so this is what it used to be. I guess this is above 280 Kaisa. W, 10 damage flat to compensate for the total attack damage nerf, because I guess the idea here is that they really want you to commit to either buying full AP or full AD. And I think if you go for a mixed build, I think you're going to come out similarly strong with a bit of extra punch. But I don't think this addresses Kaisa's key issues. Kaisa is very reliant on what is going on in the meta, needs a lot of CC and needs a lot of supports that can go in, and these are the supports that are being faded out right now in the meta. And as long as that's the case, Kaisa has the issue of dealing with a lot of the AD carries that are very good right now, like the Varos, Misfortune, Aphelios, Senna. All of these AD carries are just too good against Kaisa in lane. And she didn't have an issue post upgrades. Like, she never had an issue when she started to get her E upgrade, Q upgrade. This was not Kaisa's weakness. If she got to that point, she was very strong already, so buffing that part of her, unless she becomes too freaking broken that, like, oh, you get 3 items, you win the game. Of course, that's not the case with this buff, so I think this is insignificant. Kayn, passive orb gain increased, W slow increased. Orb gain rate increases constantly every second after 5 minutes, flattening out at 13 minutes. Okay, so if you are between, I guess you get more stacks between 5 and 8 minutes, and then you get less until 8:30, I believe, if my math is correct. Maybe it's off. You can correct me in the chat or in the comments. There is no chat, I'm not doing this live. And then flattening out at 13 minutes, once again, where at 12 minutes is going to be less than it used to be, and then it balanced out at 13. So between the timer of 5 and 8, you're going to get more, and then between the timer of 9 and 12, you're going to get more than before. And then there is 1 full minute there for each timer, basically from 8 to 9 and 12 to 13, where you're going to have less than before, if I understand this correctly, which is neat. This is going to give you a better window to, when you're fighting around that Drake timer, it is going to be helpful, around that Drake timer, around whatever. DK slow 10%. I don't think this is enough to be felt. I think Kayn is a trash champion, and it is, it's great when you have the form, but when you don't have the form, you're at the mercy of being so much better than the enemy jungler, in most cases in solo queue, which is sometimes a fine approach, but I think most of the time you can accomplish more with other junglers. So I think Kayn is in a weird spot always. Lissandra, Q AP ratio increased, 0.1 AP scaling on Q, which is neat considering it's an AoE ability, very small cooldown. It is cool and all, but I think considering the itemization we see on Lissandra most of the time, she doesn't get that big AP numbers. Now maybe people buy more Luden's Echo, look to go AP heavy. I think still Lissandra lost a very important keystone when they nerfed Aftershock for her, and I think usually those are the matchup where you want to pick Lissandra into, for example, an Akali, or for example into LeBlanc, or into any other champion that has some kind of all-in. And you pick it as a denial because you bring CC and you force Merc threads by and so forth. But this buff is not enough to compensate for that big loss, I think. Base attack speed growth and ratio increased, EAP ratio increased, R shield increased. Giving Neeko some buffs for any situation, no matter what chip. Excuse me. I have to wake up 6 to record Euphoria. That's why I'm done in the brain, man. That's why you guys get to hear me say some silly things. So this is cool. This is cool. This is very cool. This is honestly super big. Because attack speed ratio is her synergy with attack speed. So basically every champion gets attack speed per level, right? And depending on your attack speed ratio, the more your attack speed is going to grow. Her base attack speed starts at 645, where her attack speed ratio is 670. So basically the attack speed that you get, attack speed growth, is hand in hand together with 670, right? So they did this back when they released Runes Reforged, in order to let some champions start with a higher attack speed level 1 and then scale with attack speed items worse than some of their AD carry peers. And nevertheless, this puts her back on the map in terms of what she was before she got nerfed, so maybe we're going to see some attack speed Neeko back up in the top lane, because those lane phases were quite brutal. So maybe this is something that we will have to pay attention to, attack speed. Maybe even Sanguine Blade Neeko will show up as a solo laner, a split pusher that comes as an answer to, for example, an Aatrox, or maybe even a Gangplank. We'll just have to see. But this buff, I like it. Damage ratio, 0.4. Okay, that's pretty decent for an AoE ability. And then the shield, I think most of the time the shield kind of fades out and you don't get to use most of the shield, so I think increasing the shield power is whatever. AP Neeko is still kind of trash because the champion just lacks a clear direction. Like it just seems like they pieced together a champion with a spell from 4 different champions. So it's a very, very odd idea here. But I think WMAX Neeko with attack speed maybe might show up, or of course there was no buff to the W, no buff to W move speed or damage or anything like that. So I think they are paying attention to this. But attack speed Neeko, for sure. Long heavy awaited Ornn. Let's see if they just did what they put in the patch notes. I mean, the PBE notes. Yep, it's exactly what they put in PBE notes. 2% less damage for Brittle. Sure, it will hurt your trades where you are playing on Brittle and Grasp and so forth. But I don't think 2% is enough to put you out of the range of one-shotting people when you have Ignite on 6, if you do the correct combo. So I think this is whatever. I usually don't pick this for the damage anyway. I think 2% matters, but not enough for Ornn to not be picked every game. Masterwork item auto upgrades level 13, and then 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay. Well, it's an okay nerf, but not enough to push Ornn out, and I think he needs to be gutted even further. I think they need to rethink the approach here. Okay. Rammus wasn't actually okay like we thought, pulling back some of the power from 10.4's buffs. So this is a attack speed ratio nerf, right? So the base attack speed remains the same, and the attack speed ratio is going to be decreased. So as we spoke about before with Neeko, Rammus' value that he gets per level when he gets attack speed per level and buys attack speed items is going to be worse. And that's the whole idea. And I'm trying to remember... Oh, wow. Oh, what is that? Trying to remember here. So, trying to remember here, Rammus. I believe he gets attack speed when he E's. So yeah, this bonus attack speed, right? This is going to be less valuable. The attack speed he gets on level 1, if he gets like this matters as well, right? He's going to have less value from this attack speed. He's going to have less value from buying attack speed. No more wits end on Rammus or whatever people buy. But this is of course another nerf that is targeted at the noobs. So cheers. Sett. Base armor health regen growth decreased. R slow duration decreased. While he's mostly showing off in top lane sets also. Well, health regen of Sett was unbelievably OP. Like he could play into range matchups and practically ignore most enemies with Door and Shield because his health regen from his passive and his base health regen was just too high. 4 armor is pretty goddamn significant, and if you think of the AD champions on top side, they're going to be very happy about this. Whether it's any type of Bruisers, a Fiora, or an Aatrox, or a Lucian even, a Gangplank, any AD champion, this is going to be huge because those matchups were relatively on edge already, but I think most players didn't know how to play Sett, and I think these nerfs are a bit too fast because I think the world hasn't kind of figured out how to play Sett perfectly yet in lane. Well, of course, his win ratio is way too high in solo queue, so he needs to be nerfed, so I get it. I'm not complaining about that. It's kind of iffy because I don't think the world has figured out how to play Sett. When I say the world, I mean like the average level of Sett players and competitive is rather low. Especially from what we're seeing here in the LEC. There is no Sett player that kind of stands out besides maybe Whipple. The rest are kind of meh. So, I'm not sure. For competitive, I think it's okay. The champion definitely has the numbers to be really, really busted. So I'm okay with the nerfs, for sure. Showstopper, 1 second to target, and Sett probably gets assist. Okay. Okay. So another nerf. Okay. This is a pretty big nerf, honestly. Pretty big nerf. Sivir, Q damage increase later, R minimum move speed now scales. Sivir is now weaker side across all games, so we're buffing her. Damage per pass. Base damage decreased by 5 per rank. 5, 10, 15, 20. Except the first rank, of course, that remains the same. And then AD scaling, total deck damage 1.3, which is neat, considering Sivir's build most of the time, right? Essence Reaver, i.e. your damage numbers are going to be rather high, so this is an okay buff. Problem still for Sivir is that, same as Kaisa, she struggles in most lane matchups, and now Alistar got even buffed, and Sivir hates that. Sivir just struggles too hard against what's going on in the meta. There might be some scenarios where Sivir Yuumi might be back if she has a decent matchup. For example, you can pick Sivir into Kaisa in some cases, Sivir into Nautilus, Sivir into Xayah in some cases is playable, like a Sivir Morgana lane into Xayah Rakan might be playable. Oh, what did I just press? Okay. Okay. In some matchups, Sivir still might show up, but it's so rare, so I just don't think it's gonna happen. Still, Sivir Yuumi maybe deserves to be played more. People are always going Ezreal Yuumi, but maybe Sivir Yuumi, Lucian Yuumi, maybe there's something to explore there for sure. Sona. Base AD and AD growth increased, E self move speed increased and now flat. Oh wow. I guess there is some changes that are going to happen further down the patch. So we are going to see what they mean. I'm assuming just top lane Sona is not going to work anymore. So this is still pretty neat. Like this makes Sona bot really strong. I think Sona bot is really, really strong. Very, very good to abuse in solo queue, I think. This is huge. Really, really huge. When you try to cast an ability outside its max range, one of two things will happen. Either you'll walk into range and then cast the ability, or please tell me you can turn this off. Please tell me you can turn this off. Misfortunes E, make it rain, Syndra's Q, Dark Sphere. Oh no. Please tell me you can turn it off. Like if you can't turn this off, then I hate changes like this, man. Like isn't it enough that you nerf Amumu and Rammus for the noobs? Okay, do you have to change the game as well? Like if you can't turn this off, it's actually really frustrating. Really frustrating. Ah. Oh. Anyway. Jungle Champions. Last patch round of Jungle Champion pool changes went well. Lots of players in the target skill range have been finding success trying the new picks out. Hemorrhage damage to monsters. Ooh, okay. More buff to Darius lane. Darkness Rise. More the Kaisa buff to lane. Hammer Shock max health damage cap. Ooh. Juicy, juicy. This is 10 extra damage. 10 extra damage, which of course applies twice. And then after that, it's 40 damage and so forth. This is huge. Because Poppy, like, imagine you pick Poppy into Lee Sin jungle. He's screwed. Poppy has such a strong W spell and such a strong ultimate. It is bound to be useful in a lot of scenarios. Like enemies playing Lee Sin, Rakan, Ornn, all of a sudden, you know, you have a lot of champions that Poppy can actually interact with and do super well with. So I think any type of buff for Poppy is hype. It's very, very hype. With this in mind, we continue. Top lane significance. Turret plays grant more gold, take more damage from melee champions, and are more resilient to group pushes. Okay. So, more gold plating. Turret plate takes 17% reduced damage from ranged champions. Okay? But the turret platings have less armor. So still, top laners that are hitting... Still, ranged top laners are still good. Because even though they are doing 17% reduced damage, you are still... Like this armor lost here on the turret is enough to compensate, I think. But this isn't the case when you're hitting alone. Bulwark resistance 45 per nearby enemy champion past the second. So I guess what's going to happen is that you are going to tell your support to get the fuck out when you are trading sides. You're just gonna just screw off, man. You're giving the turret armor, man. Piss off. It's going to be pretty funny. This is... I'm paying attention to this change the most because I think this is what is going to impact the game the most. 40 more gold per plate. We are approaching the numbers of what it used to have, which is a cool bean. It's cool. We like early game snowball. This is going to put more emphasis on Rift Herald because that's what it does. It makes Rift Herald more impactful, right? Platings become more impactful. And it just to me, this is just buff to big buff to Rift Herald, and what I'm thinking about is, let's say Jace Elise. This is a buff to Jace Elise. Imagine they kill top and then they don't get a penalty here for any reduced damage because you are hitting in melee form with Spider Elise and Jace Hammer, right? So you don't get a penalty. In the end, still, if you're hitting with two people, the armor is going to go back to the same. So they've done a neat way of buffing top laners, but still, if you're playing for top and you're hitting the top with two people, you are still you're not going to be able to outrace someone that hits with three people anyway. So I don't know. The bottom line is, I guess, that the 17% reduced damage from ranged champions, that's a key takeaway here. But these are also, we need to keep in mind that melee champions aren't usually the ones to hit the turret anyway, So ranged champions can hit the turret more easily. So even though it's a buff to melee champs, I don't know if it's big enough. The key thing as well is that it reduces damage from, of course, demolish. There are some ranged champions that you demolished, and this was tricky. Another thing is, this is a big nerf to anything that likes to roam a lot. Any top laner that likes to roam a lot, when you roam or you TP away, you're gonna lose so fucking much here. Like, imagine you leave a gangplank alone to hit your turret, yeah? You're going to TP somewhere because you want to match the GP ult. This just promotes a gameplay where top laners will almost refuse to TP away from their turret. Because when you TP away and you pressure enemy bot and the enemy top laner can race you, like 1v4 outrace you, because the fucking armor of the turret is going to be so high, it's going to be crazy. But in the end, I'm trying to theorize here, and I just don't feel like this is going to impact the game so much in terms of the mindset. I just think more Rift Herald emphasis, and beyond that, it's whatever. More Rift Herald emphasis, and then top laners will complain about TPing away from top. That's it. TPing away from top is gonna suck. Like, look at the top lanes that are being played right now. I imagine you leave Sett to punch your turret alone right now. It's gonna be costly, very costly, or a gangplank. So it's interesting. It's very interesting. Okay, we dwelled on this too long. Current health damage increase for melee champions. Oh, okay. Basic death deal bonus physical damage on hit equal to 8% target scanner. Okay, 12%. Oh. Okay, well, let's think of champions that might actually buy this. So I'm thinking Sett might buy it. Sett, Renekton, Irelia can buy it a couple of times. This is just a buff for bruisers into tanks. So Sunfire Cape buffs is rough for a lot of the bruisers. Blade Rune King might be purchased as an option. Lifesteal increased 6%. Oh, that's pretty significant, honestly. 6% lifesteal, another buff into tank matchup, because any form of sustain is good into tanks because they're relying on base numbers. And if you can sustain up, this is definitely welcome. So 6% lifesteal, that's pretty decent. That's nice. This is cool for Ravenous Hydra and all the Renekton and Bruiser players out there. Good solo queue changes. I don't think it's going to change the meta too much. Unless everything changes because of this and everyone's going to play like Renekton Sejuani right away. But I just doubt that we're going to have such a massive shift because Ornn isn't nerfed enough. Ornn just isn't nerfed enough. With Sett nerf, we might see something else happen. Who knows? I just think GP is still really OP. Sett is going to be played. Aatrox is going to be played. And as long as that's the case, I think maybe Camille has room to come back or something like this. Because this is also a Camille buff, right? This is a Camille buff. Titanic Hydra passive damage to targets and account increased. Oh, 1.5% users max health. Okay, that's neat. This is cool. This is fun. We appreciate this. But I don't think it's significant enough to change the state of the game. I think we're going to have some buffs coming in soon for the Bruiser class, because the Bruiser class is struggling right now on top. So these are the changes. Tribute now procs only require an Elite champion within 2000 range. Okay. Mobbies heavily increased the ability to snowball in higher rank games. Okay, so this is the bad nerf we've been waiting for. It's pretty significant. 100 gold is a much later timing for support, so 100 Gs definitely matters. I don't think people are going to buy them any less. They are still one of a kind, and I think they fit a niche very nicely. Swifties are just not that great right now. Oh, I think Swifties has applications. I like Swifties. But okay, maybe some Swifty Kalista action. Base move speed. This is nice. I think 5 base move speed for Swifties is pretty goddamn good. I think there are some champions that really lack mobility, and getting boosted swiftness might be nice. Maybe boosted swiftness on Cassiopeia or Rise. Obviously, I'm joking when I say Cassiopeia. Yeah. So these are the North American LCS changes. Akali got 80% damage dealt, 15% damage taken. Alistar 5% plus damage taken, that's a nerf. Yuumi 5% damage dealt, back to normal. Zac 5% damage dealt to normal. Okay, so we might see less Zac and less Yuumi in the North American LCS. This is Riot Games being very greedy. We don't give that any attention. Stronzi. Bug fixes, too tired to read, cool skins, Anivia cow, Anivia, and then the fuck? This looks like from some game, no? This is taken from some game. So this looks like it's taken from some game. Reminds me of the first scene on like in Attack on Titan when they ride through the city. But this reminds me of some game. I can't put my finger on what game. Okay. I guess this is a nice way to end it because I can't close it. Okay, to summarize. A lot of nerfs for solo queue champs. Bard, Blitzcrank, solo queue also, Amumu, Rammus. Neeko buff is interesting, honestly. The attack speed ratio buff, I like it, which might bring back the top laner there. Attack speed Neeko. I think the turret plating changes and the turret changes is not enough to shift the top lane landscape and to give more emphasis on top. I think the turret plating gold change is going to make Rift Herald more valuable, and I think the key thing that is going to happen is that people are going to be less eager to TP away from top side. And I think the key takeaway is that, just TPing away from top is going to be a lot more awkward. We'll have to see how it develops, but not that big of a patch. 10.5 doesn't change too much of the game. Thank you so much for watching. If you watched till the end, bless you and bless your face. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.